This story started last December, although I didn't know it at the time. It's only after yesterday's rather strange encounter that I really recognized a pattern of seemingly bizarre activities going on at a certain business in the office complex across the street from where I work. It occurred to me this morning that I should post this online to see what other people think could possibly be going on, or if I'm simply seeing a conspiracy where there is none. I'm not a writer, so you'll have to bear with my high school level of proper English grammar. I work in a 2-story office building across from a larger complex of 1-story executive suites made up of individual office warehouse units. If life were Sim City, I would say it's zoned light commercial, light industrial. With a full-time job, precocious toddler at home, a busy wife, and a time-consuming video game hobby, I have little time for exercise. So, on my lunch breaks, I like to go for walks in and around the various office complex in the area I work. For miles in every direction, the area is filled with concrete and stucco buildings, warehouses, offices, like much of suburban South Carolina. The executive suites across the street are a frequent destination, mostly due to their proximity, but also their eclectic nature. For example, there's a Pilates gym, a silkscreen business, a janitorial supplies merchant, a custom ammo manufacturer, a civil engineer, and even a full-featured Italian restaurant. How much business they do in such a setting is anybody's guess. I go walking at lunch and rarely see more than 2 tables with people at them, but I digress. Each unit, of which there are approximately 50, consists of an office storefront facing the streets that surround the complex, and then a warehouse with a truck-sized rolling door on the back facing a small maze of inner alleys. This leads me to the business on the end. They are on the far end of a middle building sandwiched between 2 larger buildings. The front faces a small parking lot, and the back a huge cinder block wall that divides this complex from the one next to it. The unit next to this place is uninhabited, and the one next to that one is a very popular silkscreen t-shirt place. The silkscreen guys often have their roll-up door and back wide open, and sometimes sup me as I walk past. I've never seen any cars near this unit except one, a solid black Maserati. It's got custom vanity plates, custom rims, and an overall look that screams rich douchebag. The unit itself is unremarkable. Their front-facing windows are covered in 100% blackout tint, so you can't see in, although it is faded and torn in places. Their decal on the door is similarly faded and tattered. It gives only a little clue as to what they may do. The name itself I'm not going to say for fear of another conspiracy, but suffice to say it's a long 9-word acronym that you can tell that was thrown together by someone who thinks they were clever. 2 of the words do give a minor clue. One is defense, the other is engineering. I've Googled it and come up with no info. No Google business entry. No website. Nothing. For all I know, the decal belonged to a business that used to be in that spot, but is now defunct. Or it could be a legitimate name. They are just very private, which is weird for a business in a public office park. I honestly have no idea. Up until yesterday, I've never seen anyone come in or out. Only the black Maserati parked out front. Due to the vacancy next door to it, the adjacent parking spots are normally empty, unless one of the other businesses is having a busy day. So before I discuss yesterday's incident, let me tell you about what I saw in December. It was a week between Christmas and New Year's. Most businesses around here are closed, and I was the only one at work that day to catch up on some projects while having fewer people at work to bother me. As I'm walking down the alley toward the business at the end, I hear the sound of a rolling door going up and notice immediately a mist coming from under the door at the end, as if under pressure. I say a mist, but it was more like someone had a fog machine on. My curiosity was piqued. I had thought nothing about the business at the end until this very moment, and now was somewhat excited to get a glimpse into what they do. The door was nearly up when I passed, and by now the steam, mist, fog had mostly dissipated. It smelled sweet, faintly of pollen and of honey. I glanced inside as I walked past, and what I saw was so unexpected. The interior of the warehouse was nearly empty. Every wall and opening was covered in white plastic, as if they were painting, or a medical quarantine. I've seen too many zombie movies. There was a separate room made from a stand-up party sun tent, the kind you would take to a picnic or outdoor party, to provide your guests with some shade. And that was in the center of the empty warehouse. It was entirely wrapped in white plastic so you couldn't see inside, but lit from within by some unseen extremely bright light source. A distorted silhouette of someone or something moving within was the only activity. The guy who was working the roll-up door chain was dressed head to toe in white plastic, like a painter or sandblaster would wear, including a face mask and a full clear plastic face shield, so I couldn't really determine his features. He saw me staring inside, stared at me, and immediately started closing the roll-up door, again as fast as he could. I saw nothing that could have generated the fog. Everything was so white and bright. I don't think I saw any equipment anywhere. I remember thinking to myself, how weird, but whatever. I promptly forgot about it as I had other things on my mind. That is, until yesterday. I was on my walk and was about to turn the corner to the front, facing section of the building of where this business is, when I heard a car horn honking and a woman yelling. I figure I have to see what the hubbub is all about. I've drawn an image to give you the layout of the place. As I turn the corner, I see basically every parking spot is full. Next to the black Maserati at the end is a woman in a blue VW Beetle. She's the one who's honking and yelling, because behind her car, standing perfectly still, is a tall white-haired man in an immaculate three-piece suit. He looks kind of like Mitt Romney, but with whiter hair. Age 65 or so. He's tall, 6'6" at least, which is a shock with white hair. Now this is Southern Carolina. People working in suits is rare. They're either lawyers or trying to sell you something. And a guy in a suit like this is totally out of place for a low-rent, light industrial office complex like this. But there he is. He's holding a briefcase at his side and staring off into space. The woman is honking because she's trying to back out, and this dude's blocking the way. As I walk closer, I see he's not even looking at her or her car. He's just staring off into a tree. As I draw closer, I stop, and I realize he's not just staring. He's thumping his fingers as he holds the briefcase. You know how sometimes when you're bored, you thump your fingers one at a time on your desk? He's doing that as he squeezes the briefcase handle. His pinky loosens, then tightens, then ring finger, middle finger, index finger. Slowly, in rhythm, as if to some music only he can hear. Pinky finger, ring finger, middle finger, index finger. Again, pinky finger, ring finger, middle finger, index finger. Again. It's hypnotic. I've stopped walking at the red star on the map, just to watch what is going on. Then, all of a sudden, the spell is broken. The woman is backing up slowly into this guy. I guess she got sick of waiting. Maserati Mitt finally moves at the back bumper, brushes him, and without even looking at her or me, he strides to the front of the business, unlocks the door, and goes in, while the blue VW lady peels out, yelling one last obscenity at him, and giving me the "he's crazy" look. He doesn't even notice. I walk past his office front, and I hear the distinct click of the deadbolt. I continue my walk, but now I have lots to think about. Did this woman have business with him? Why was he blocking her? Did he even know she was there? He seemed oblivious. And what the hell does this business do? The guy is obviously filthy rich. Why does he work in such a crummy office park? As I'm walking back to my office, I remember the blackout tint on the windows is scratched and falling off in places. If I'm really curious, maybe I could peer in. But to do so at lunch on a workday in a busy complex would seem too weird, if not suspicious. Perhaps I could go knock on the door and pretend to be some sort of customer. I wish I had more of a resolution for you, but something instinctual, deep in the back of my mind, tells me getting involved with this place and this guy is a bad idea. Part 2 of the story. So after my last post, I resolved to get to the bottom of this situation. My wife thinks that this has to be a legitimate business of some sort. Why else would they be in a public and well-frequented office complex? She thinks I could get this whole mystery worked out simply by going up to their door and introducing myself as a possible buyer of their wares or services, whatever that may be. So I convinced myself to do just this. But as I started my lunchtime walk today, I began having doubts. I'm not normally a confrontational person, and I felt like I would act horribly anxious and suspicious in front of them, which would probably be the case. I decided to walk around back first, see if their roll-up was open, or to look for any possible clue as to what they do, before going around front and possibly going inside. As I approached the end, I noticed something different about their unit that I hadn't noticed before. Every roll-up door in the complex has a short 2 to 3 inch brush on the bottom, made up of coarse black hairs. The whole thing pivots out when the door is drawn, and is covered by a short rubber flap. I assume they use these to keep heating and AC bills down by preventing as much of the draft as possible due to the gap between the ground and the door. However, the business on the end has no such flap, and the gap between the ground and the door is filled with what looks like black expandable insulation foam. This seems like an odd choice if you've ever worked with it before. That stuff is pretty sticky and becomes brittle after it hardens. You definitely wouldn't want to use it on a door you were thinking about opening often, and if you did, it would probably crack and be useless after 1 to 2 uses. The whole gap is filled end to end with this stuff, and it looks like an amateur job too. In places it bulges out obviously, like they were pushing out of the tube too hard when they were putting it in. I'm sure this wasn't there in December. I would have noticed broken, cracked, black insulation foam everywhere against the whiteness of the inside. I took out my phone at this point to make it look like I was just carefully stopping by to walk and check my texts. I leaned against the wall next to their roll-up and glanced about. No one was in the alley, and I was alone. I leaned slightly toward the door. All I could hear was a slight hum of a running AC unit. It was a mild day, maybe 65 degrees. Inside, it could be warmer, so running AC isn't that unusual, but it still struck me as strange. I thought I almost heard something else, a voice maybe, so I cautiously put my ear against the door. The AC was much louder now. As I strained my ears, I could hear nothing else. I listened for what felt like a minute. Then I began to pull away, and I heard a loud drip. When I say a drip, I don't mean a leaky faucet or condensation coming off an AC. This sounded like a bowling ball being dropped into a swimming pool. A voluminous ploop sound, and then silence. It had a thick feeling to it, and because of my experience back in December with the honey-smelling mist, all I could picture was something being dropped into a large vat of honey. An odd image, but that is what I imagined. Because of the drip, I listened longer, but heard nothing further. At this point, I heard the rusty creak of one of the roll-ups down the row being opened, and decided now would be a good time to get moving. I put my phone away and headed around the corner. My resolve to reintroduce myself was completely gone by this point. It was just too weird a feeling. But I thought I might try to peer in, and if caught, pretend to be someone looking for some other business in the complex, and continue on my merry way. I turned the corner and the Maserati was there, freshly cleaned and gleaming in the sunlight. I took a long look at the front of the business. The tint was scratched in several places, but I'd have to bend over and look weird trying to get to it. That is, until I saw the tear near the door. It was perfect. From the door handle up to eye level, a whole strip of tint about 1 to 2 inches wide was ripped. It looks as if maybe it had caught on something and been torn off when they opened the door. It tapered off towards the top of the door, but was wide enough at my height that I could probably get a fairly decent glimpse inside if I walked up to the door. I approached, keeping my eyes fixed on that slit, looking for any detail. And there he was, Maserati Mitt, seated behind a desk and directly facing the door. I caught my breath, but then I realized his eyes were closed. One hand was on his desk, the other hand on the side of his head holding it, as if in thought or sleeping at his desk. His head was at a weird angle. I was just completely emboldened and stood flush with the door and peered in to glance all around the office. The first thing I noticed that except for Mitt and his desk, the office was entirely empty. Bare white walls with the occasional scuff or nail hole. Featureless gray office carpet with the odd stain and tear. One closed and unmarked door on the far wall, possibly leading to the warehouse space. No furniture to speak of except for Mitt's plain white desk. His briefcase sat at the side of the desk on the floor. The desk top held nothing but a 90s-style office phone, plugged into the wall by a thick black cord. No computer, no laptop, no file cabinet, nothing. Just empty except for Mitt sitting at the desk in front of the phone. Who has a job without any sort of computer or files or anything? I must have accidentally bumped the door, because at that moment his hand on the desk twitched and raised a little. And then I realized he was holding something. A round golden paperweight. No, it was a gold coin, like a Krugerrand or others collector's coin. But as I focused on it, I thought it would actually look like a doubloon. Here is this weird rich guy, sitting alone in an empty office, holding a fucking golden pirate coin, right out of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Nope. It was time to nope out of there. This is just too strange. This is not something that happens on a normal sunny day in suburban South Carolina. Eccentric rich guys, while there are many, but in an empty office with blackout tint, playing with a piece of pirate treasure, this shit is just bizarre. That's when I noticed that his eyes were no longer closed. In fact, he was staring right at me, head now straight, and he didn't look surprised, not at all. He had a smile on his face, a knowing smile, half smile, half smirk. He stared straight into my eyes, and they said it all. I froze. I felt like that guy in Scanners who gets his mind blown. I took a step back, regained my composure, broke contact, and I walked away as fast as I could, in a random direction. I passed storefront after storefront and walked randomly through the alleys. I felt like he was following me. I kept looking behind, but he wasn't there. I crossed another street into another complex. I was going to be late getting back to work, but at this point, I didn't care. I felt stalked. I had to cross a main street to get back to my office, and rather than go back to the crosswalk near that office complex, I decided to jaywalk, then double back to my office on the other side of the street. There were so many cars coming, and I had to wait. As I waited, I saw it, and I should have expected it. A black Maserati. He didn't slow. He didn't stop. But his window was rolled down. And as he passed, he gave me that knowing smile, staring right at me as he smirked. And I think my mouth dropped open. I waited until his car was out of sight, and then I crossed. I went behind my office building next to mine, and came in to mine from the back. I never saw him again, but I was still freaked out. My boss asked why I was so late. I just told him I had business to take care of. I don't know if I will ever have another update for you. I'm freaked out, guys. That look he gave me? It's fixated in my mind. He knew. I'm done. I'm not going for walks in that complex ever again. Hell, I may never go for lunch walks ever again. But if anything else happens, I will be sure to update you guys. Thanks for listening to the end, guys. This is The Sinful Savant. Please make sure to leave a like, comment, share the video with everybody, subscribe to join the Sinful Nation. Feel free to email your stories to my email. It's in the info box below. Hope everyone's having a great week. And until next time, stay sinful.